startup. Well, not the interview I was expecting to conduct here, but Landon's running a little late. So go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Tom Legeman. I'm the spotter for the 00 Racing Chevrolet for Landon Cassill.
Yeah, and we've been sitting here talking the past 20 minutes or so, and quite a lot of stories to tell. So I guess we've been talking about how you use different spotting terminologies, how you really got into it, and it seems like it's sort of a grind in any position in NASCAR, whether you're going to be a crew chief, a driver, a spotter, or anything, that you start from the bottom and work your way up. And is that what you found as well?
Yeah, that's what I found, and that's essentially where I started. I also do marketing as well, but where I started on the team end, and I enjoy the team end because it keeps me in the competition, keeps me in the groove of things. But where I started essentially was helping out Jamie Obey, who's a 3-time Busch East champion, and worked on his car, and Johnny Lazat, who ran up here at Oxford Plains as well, Oxford Plains champion, and then just kind of worked my way up, worked on the cars, volunteered. One thing led to another. I gassed for Jamie. I changed tires for him here and there. And then one time we were a spotter short, and the spotter he had he didn't like, so he put me up in the spotter stand, and that started my career spotting.
Did you ever do any work over at some of the more local tracks, Stafford Speedway or anything like that?
Yeah, I did, not too much. I mean, with the Busch East then, it was the Busch North Series. We'd run at Stafford, so we'd be there a couple of times a year. Thompson's still one of my favorite tracks. I love that place. It's bad fast, and it gets your attention. Actually, won a race. I was gassing for Steve Park.
Okay.
With when Hibbard ran the car, and we won the North race there, which was pretty cool. One of I think it was Steve Park's first win.
Okay.
So yeah, that was pretty cool back in the day, back in the early '90s. But just started out that way, and then I gassed, and then I helped Tommy Ellis one time. His gas man, it was here at New Hampshire. Second race, Tommy won the very first race here in 1990. 1991, his gas man fell off the trailer, broke his leg, and they came looking for me at the last minute and basically pulled me out. Charles Hatcher, who's an official here, said, "Can you gas?" I said, "Yeah, I can." So I became the gas man for my first Xfinity race in 1991. It was pretty neat, and I ended up working with those guys a lot of different places.
And you mentioned that it was sort of from there, just someone slipped you a business card and said, "Hey, if you want to come roll with us, then come with us." And I don't know, do you foresee that happening nowadays with someone where it is 20 some odd years later, not to make you feel old, but
I am old.
But it's such a different sport now with someone trying to get into it. Do you foresee someone being able to just, hey, get on the road with us, let's go?
Yeah, it's still possible. So I've recommended young men and young women into the sport. This is still a word-of-mouth sport, and people that trust me trust who I recommend, and it's still that way for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people send resumes to teams. You got to befriend some people, go work for them for free. If they see your work ethic, they like what you do, all of a sudden you'll get a paycheck. Let me give you a classic example. Chris Buescher, he'd won the ARCA championship, came to work for Roush, and they really didn't have a ride for him. So he says, "What do I do?" And I said, "Just go work in the shop." So Robbie Reiser was the team manager, and he says, "Chris, I can't pay you, but just come on in." Well, he worked his rear off and did a great job. A month later, Robbie came out with an envelope and said, "Well, you're working so hard and you're making a difference. I guess I got to give you a check." So from that, his guys, he befriended all those guys. They put a race car together that Travis Pastrana had wrecked, and set the goal of going to Michigan with it. And Robbie was able to finagle an engine out of Roush Yates for him. And they went and they ran as high as fourth, and I believe they finished seventh in his very first Xfinity race at Michigan. So hard work. Chris didn't have any money to come into the sport like many of these kids do. Worked his rear off, worked 12, 14 hours a day. Actually, he was working 18 hours a day. They'd work till 6 on the race cars, and then work on his car till midnight to put it together. So it still can be done. This sport is still a recommendation from people. If they like you and see your work ethic, they'll go put you at a team. And those that work hard and understand the sport and keep learning, they're still here today.
Right, and the people that'll be listening to this, I've told this story 100 times, but I work as an announcer down at Stafford, and that seriously was, I called them one day, I said, "Hey, do you guys have any positions available?" And they said, "Well, we're not looking for anything just for the summer. We're really filled up at the moment." I said, let me go drop off a resume. And I walked into the track office, handed them a resume. Luck would have it, the track owners were there. I started talking to them, and they said, "You know what? Just just show up. Let's start you out on Monday nights with the kart series.
Yeah.
And, there's maybe 20 people that go and watch it. So I worked hard there, and then they said, okay, we got a spot open on Friday nights. We want you to come there. 3 weeks in, and I'm on pit road. They hand me a microphone. They say, okay, trial by fire, get out there. We'll see where that ends up leading. But I'm asking this so that if anyone else is listening and they're on the edge, sort of like I was, and they're going, well, I don't know, it's hard to get into the sport. You're absolutely right, it's hard, and I think you'll agree. I mean, you started doing gas, and now you're up on top of the spotter stand. So
yep, and marketing. I brought in sponsorship here and there, which is originally what I was doing, but so throughout the sport, I've been able to maintain and make a good living in it, doing exactly what I want to do, and I can't ask for any more.
So with Starcom growing, you guys getting better and better finishes consistently, what are the future plans from someone who's, you're not the team owner per se, but you're someone that's working there on the car every day and a major part of it? Where do you see this team in, let's say, 3 years?
I see us possibly expanding to two cars over the next 3 years, which I think is, when you get a second car and a second driver, you've got that much more input. You have to time your growth accordingly. You have to have the personnel that are not only available, but the personnel that will accept your culture and philosophy at the same time. It just makes for an easier transition. We've got enough cars and equipment, but I can see us maybe, hopefully, and I'm not speaking for Alicia and not speaking for Derek, but just as I see it, a two-car team would be beneficial to us as an overall organization. It'd be beneficial to Landon as a driver to have input from another driver, and just continue to grow. We've got an excellent engine program with ECR engines out of Richard Childress Racing. If we can keep expanding on that, they've done well for us. And just, rules changes happen every year, so if we can keep up on that and get a little more breadth in our engineering. We've got Chris Stanley here, a fine young man. If we can help build on some of his programs and be able to utilize that would be great. When you're a small team, you pirate a lot of information. So you have to, Joe Williams as a crew chief is excellent at seeing what other cars are doing, what other people are doing, and figuring it out and adapting it. And, when you have friends in the garage, you utilize those friendships, you get some information that you need when you're a small team, because we don't have a multi-million-dollar engineering department. I mean, if we have multi-million dollars, it's going to the car to sponsor it and put them together. So our engineering department is being able to take some crew guys out for a couple of beers and get some information, write it down, and leave. And vice versa. We do share some information here and there where we can. I hope none of the other owners are listening to this. But
I understand.
But that's our engineering program in a sense. But it does work. It does help us. We're a 25th to 30th place team. During the intermediate tracks, where we shine is where Arrow's not as important. Martinsville,
Daytona,
Bristol, and then the super speedways, Daytona. And Landon's a very good super speedway driver. Joe puts together a great car. I mean, we had a great car at Daytona, great handling car. Would have loved to have seen it gone to the end. We had a plan with Kurt Busch. With Kyle Larson dropping out, he had no one to help him, and he asked us to help him. And boy, it would have been nice to see how that would have played out.
And so you mentioned going to a two-car team, and that's something that Starcom has done in the past. And we talked about this a bit earlier, but what could have been done better in order to maintain that two-car team? Or was it, do you think, the right move, and it's just not necessarily a mistake, but maybe getting too much in the water with going for two teams? Or was that a strategy to run two teams for a year?
It can be good and bad, but I think where it helped us, the silver lining was we had twice the crew. So knowing that we were probably going to end up running one car, and I wasn't here with them last year other than a couple of races, but knowing that you were going to run probably just one car with the one charter in 2019, it helped you to evaluate some crew members in the sense that you had double the crew, you had double the people. So in a sense, you were able to cherry pick between the two teams, come up with the best group, and go forward. When you go to make this work as a second car, you really have to have a charter to go with it. They're limited. There's only 36 of them out there. There's probably only 3 or 4 teams that may consider selling one. So you just got to keep your ears to the ground and see if there's a deal that could be struck. I don't know if there's going to be any next year. It's it's hit and miss depending on teams' fortune and financials. So with the charter we have, it's been very good for us. The charters start paying well when you add sponsorship to it. You can race at a particular level and be competitive in that particular level. So the cars we're racing, are the 32s, the 52, 51s, the 15s, 77s. We try to attain to race against the 38, for instance, and we've been very close on that. 32 is a good car, so if you can start getting, we're a 32nd place average team, 31st. We're trying to get to 28th or 27th. You get more money than you grow it. Tageshecker is a great example. He's been able to get a lot of money and now his cars are running top 15, top 10 here and there. And really, it's money and people. It's more so people, but you got to pay them well. So you got to have the money to go with it to get the better people to put better cars together.
So that seems to be a common thread among every team that I talk to, every person I talk to. It's money, 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 money. And compared to the other teams that are spending near the same amount as you, maybe spending a bit more than you mentioned the 38. Do you feel like you're beating teams that are outspending you from skill level now that you guys are in this for a couple years?
Yeah, a little bit. And we're, like I said, 38 still beats us, but we're knocking on the door, and I know that bothers them, which is fine. It's supposed to. But we're getting to a point of a level to where I think we're somewhat maxing out to what we have for money and skill and equipment. To go to the next step, you've got to look at it and look at the finances. Derek's really good about that. Derek and Alicia, they look over the finances and what's it going to take to get to that next level. And again, I go back, if you go back to back 15 years to Furniture Row, I remember when they first started out in 2004, and then when they went to Cup to 2005, they were missing races. They eventually won a championship, in 2017. It took a lot to get there, but each step of the way, they grew to various departments. Barney tried to do his own engine program, and that didn't work, so he went to the lease programs. Toyota seemed to be the best one because they give their engines out evenly to all the Toyota teams, so that worked for him. So he did, he grew it from basically where we are and started to where it won a championship. And it was basically a single car team. Yeah, they had a second team that was pretty much Toyota driven with with Eric Jones, but they were pretty much a single car team and won races. And that's where we see us going, maybe the two cars, but building it up as we go, getting the right people, and you got to use the money as a tool to pay the right people to make these cars go. It's just like baseball, or just like football. You see, the Patriots are a prime example. They've got Brady, who they help build the team around, but they'll switch people in and out, but they always get the quality people to go win a championship. It's the same over here. I think we all run a list of who we'd like to have here to help us get to the next level and what it will take. And it's, if they get tired of a team and want something different, if you can offer that up to them, a good alternative or choice, and you have them, you're happy to have them because you're going to see the results.
All right. And focusing more on today, for anyone that's not here at the track, it's hot. It's about, I'm guessing the track temp, I've heard the number about 120, 130 degrees.
About 125, 130. It'll be a hot day today.
Right. And with that much heat on the track, it's going to be slick. It's going to be crazy out there. And with the PJ1, the data from last year seems to be almost thrown out because the PJ1 last year wasn't in as much heat. And it was diluted by water, a lot of it, and reapplied in the morning. So this stuff was applied last night. How are you guys preparing for this new, really almost high downforce package meets a completely new factor? It's almost a double whammy of what could happen.
Well, let you know about lap 10. It's hard. You can do all the planning you can, but you're really not going to know until you get a couple of laps in out there. The nice thing is with it laid down in lane 1 and laid down in lane 3, lane 2 does not have it. So you do have an alternative in the sense if it's too slick up there, you can run it in lane 2, put the right sides off on the edge of lane 2 between lane 2 and lane 3 and make the car turn until some rubber gets built up above that. What you'll see is the groove will probably start low today and work its way back up higher. I'm going to say by the end of the race, you'll see the guys drive in almost lane 3 up to 4.5 and down. So the lanes will move up as the day goes. This track is funny. If you get cloud cover, it'll change. It'll get grip back in it. It's slick track racing when you got the sun out.
Right. And you know what? I see Landon is here. Can we throw him in on this interview and get a three-way going? All right.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, Bottled Up is going mobile. Yeah, please come with. So we are going up into the hauler now. All right. Yeah, it is hot today. We just mentioned.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Hey, how's it going? Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Been a while.
Yeah.
So we're doing a three-way interview right now. We're not live, but still recording.
All right.
Tommy's in here. So one thing we did talk about earlier before we actually started recording was from the beginning of the year at Daytona in the first race, how much trust has to be built up and really how quickly it has to be built up. So, I mean, being real and completely honest, I hope no hurt feelings here, but how much did you trust him at the beginning and versus where you're at now?
Well, no, he doesn't know me from Adam.
Well, yeah, I'd worked with him, but I don't want him to get a big head. But the good thing about Tommy, Tommy is he talks very clearly and he's very articulate with few words. So that's pretty important for a spotter, and so it makes it even if he's giving me information that I feel like I need to validate by looking in the mirrors or something, his ability to articulate quickly and clearly gives me time to validate information. So
To process.
yeah, so that's important. That's the kind of thing that builds trust. So even if he's giving me information that I can say is, maybe that's not right or whatever, he speaks well enough that it works.
Right, and you actually didn't hear what we were talking about outside, but we were discussing the PJ1 and how much that's going to impact it. And without giving any answers, I want to see how similar you two answer this question of what are you expecting now since last year the PJ1 was diluted with water and the rain and everything and then reapplied quickly that morning, and plus with another high downforce package and a pretty much 130 degree track temperature, what are you expecting to see from the beginning of the race to the end, and how much is this going to affect the way you're driving since you're not, let's say, racing for the lead, but you're racing a lot of other guys back there with you?
Yeah. I think the track will be tighter early with the fresh PJ1, and I think as it wears off, it'll get a little freer. The balance of the car will get freer. Probably similar to what we had at the end of happy hour yesterday. I felt like the PJ1 was getting a little wore off, so the track was a little bit freer than it was on Friday. So I think that traction compound is good at any racetrack we go to. I think it just provides options, creates sort of a dynamic surface, and it definitely made passing a little bit easier here. So I'm a fan for it at just about anywhere.
Well, it seems to be a mixed bag with drivers. Some love it, some hate it. So what makes you like it more than other drivers per se?
Just the like I said, that I think it creates options. I think it creates a dynamic surface that has the ability to change over the course of the race. It makes it maybe a little more challenging for drivers to have to keep up with it and adapt to the changing surface. And I think that drivers are probably warming up to it more so than they had been. I think there's more drivers that like the traction compound than they did a couple years ago when we first started applying it.
Right. And we've seen actually the trend seems to be a lot of Chevrolets are going to backup cars this week. And, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Alex Bowman is on his third car now, actually Jimmy Johnson's backup car. So how concerned are you as a driver of a Chevy about what's going on out there, or as a driver in general, with how many wrecks we saw yesterday in the Modifieds and Xfinity? What are you expecting when those cars are this slick?
Yeah, I mean, the track's definitely treacherous. I mean, and I think the traction compound has something to do with that, just because the groove can be narrow. If you get outside of the groove, there's not a lot of grip. So I don't think it really has anything to do with the manufacturers necessarily. Hendrick has definitely had a rough weekend with their drive shaft braking and a couple drivers making some mistakes, but we just kind of have to approach the weekend and focus on our own deal, and you got to make sure that you get through practice clean, get through qualifying clean, and have a car for the race on Sunday.
Right. And I know we're getting close to race time, so I don't want to take up too much of anyone's day, but I always end every interview I do with the same question for both of you guys, what was the first car you ever drove, like a street car, first one you ever had?
My first car was a Ford Festiva, a 1988 Ford Festiva. It was a hand-me-down from my brother. It was his first car, and when it was my turn to get it, when I turned 16, and we had to change the clutch in it because it was about smoked. And so my brother and I put
Through no fault of your own, I'm sure. The race car.
So my brother and I, my dad gave us a clutch and the instruction manual, and we put it up on a lift, and the two of us changed the clutch in an afternoon. And we had a few extra parts and pieces when we were done, but I never had any issues with it. So
It works.
it worked. It was a wonderful car. I loved it.
And what about you?
65 Volkswagen Bug. And I think I went through 3 motors in 3 years on that thing.
I think that had to have been a hot rod.
Oh, it was. We had fun with it. And my brother was racing at the time, so it'd be funny. Every Thursday I'd go get race tires and stuff them in the back and come back and mount them. So you'd see this Volkswagen with loads of tires in the back seat.
That's cool.
So pretty fun car. Got a lot of use out of it. And same thing, my dad got it for me and said, here, you got to fix it. Whatever happens, you got to put gas in it, fix it, and get a job to put gas in it. So that started all that. But
You know what?
fun car, good times, good times.
I know that story well. That's the same boat I'm in. So, well, hey, thank you guys both
Yeah,
for being on
pleasure to
Bottled
meet you.
Up.
Thanks,
Much
Jeff.
appreciated. Absolutely.